Hey everyone, welcome back to Premier Study in Investing. Great to have you. Today I'm going to be looking at a company you can see in the bottom right, Metion Therapeutics. They used to be part of Oncotelic, but they had a reverse merger. So now Metion is a private, it's a traded company, publicly traded company. They're on pink sheets. They're out of California, and they are independent from Oncotelic. So why might you be interested in that? Let's start there. First of all, as you can see, they specialize in TGF-beta inhibitors as therapeutics for the current pandemic. If you're not familiar with this, these are transforming growth factor beta. It has to do with a host protein in the cells, and it's apparently really important for basically replication of cells, cell growth, and things like that. So they have two products. Before I jump into them, let me say this. I recently put out a little article on a drug testing company. We saw that California, San Diego County, I should say, reported on their first fully vaccinated healthcare worker who has tested positive since being vaccinated. So one of the main arguments that you're going to have to think of is, how do you want to play this? So this is the OT101. Like you see, it's an antiviral. They're going to give us a lot of information about some different studies that were done, but basically, what is this? It was effective for both the original and the current pandemic. Basically, they looked at different concentrations, nanomolar inhibitor, basically tried to reduce the replication. You're going to see the same idea in a number of different slides coming up, but basically the idea is the red is viral replication based on concentration. So they stuck it right here, since by increasing the concentration they didn't see a lot of increased results. Fair enough. Next one here, we'll read the bold. It's TGF-beta superfamily receptor were observed as proviral. So an inhibitor of the TGF-beta pathway exhibited dose-dependent protection from viral-induced cell death and also inhibited replication. Okay, so that's what we're looking for. Moving on, this is another study. Upon virus infection, there was an upregulation of TGF-beta and EGFR pathways. So they're basically just trying to do the research and trying to understand what's happening inside the body. There was a preferential interaction of TGF-beta 1 and TGF-beta 2 with CoV2 over that of the original variant. So elevated TGF-beta in the current pandemic. So it says elevated TGF-beta 2 expression among RNAs isolated from bronchoalveolar lavage fluid from patients versus normal controls. This was a study here. Higher TGF-beta among severe patients, levels of systematic TGF-beta in a serum from healthy individuals, and patients with mild, moderate, and severe. So they've just done a lot of tests. You can see the amount of TGF given the severe is in red, the mild is in blue. You can see it's elevated in the red. Mild, moderate, severe, so a lot more in moderate, it appears. Impacts of elevated TGF-beta. For a lot of regular investors, you basically want to try to understand, does this make sense? Does it seem like they've proven to us that TGF does have something to do with, severity, disease reduction? I'm not going to base my argument putting that forward based on these slides, because we have a phase 1 trial data that came out. But I just want to show you basically what's going on here. Now, the OT101, this is their other product. Remember I said that it was delivered intravenously. It tells you right here, single-stranded antisense. That's the chemical breakdown. And like we said before, they're running this phase 2, 72 patients, Latin America. This is where I got the strong patent protection. Over 200 patients treated across 6 clinical trials, and orphan designation. They're also going to use it for tumors. Anyway, you have the inhibition and the replication. So these are some different results of some different compounds. This says it's their 50% effective antiviral concentration. This is their 50% cytotoxic concentration of the compounds. And then this basically divides this by this and gives you this number. So I'm not sure what RSV is. I have no idea what M1128533 is. So again, we might have to do some more digging, but maybe that's helpful for some people. Mechanism of action of OT101, the TGF-beta storm antiviral concept. Basically, on the left you have untreated. Host cell derived TGF-beta is rapidly released into the airway after a viral infection, suppressing the INF-beta responses. This creates a steady surge. And they talk later about it being basically like a positive feedback loop, which is really bad for the body. So they want to, put the kibosh on that. OT101, viral replication is suppressed, INF-beta is induced, and innate and adaptive immune responses suppressed and result protection from both viral and immune-driven pathologies, ARDS, and cytokine storm. So they underline this here. In the coming days, when the second wave of the virus will emerge during flu season, it would be desirable to have OT101 as it could potentially suppress both other respiratory infections, maybe like the flu, as well as the current virus. Anyway, the suppression of IL-6. This is their clinical trial design. Like we said, it was intravenous. Standard of care, 12 people. So this is very early, phase 2A/3. Now they have ArtiShield. It's approved for manufacturing by the Ministry of AYUSH, which we said before. It's in co-development with Windless Biotech. This is the plant from which ArtiShield or artemisinin is derived. I do a 500 milligram powder capsule. They give the case for artemisinin as a TGF-beta inhibitor. So they said that it worked well in vitro. They believe that it would suppress both viral replication and clinical symptoms that arise from viral infection. They talk about some of the percentages, but basically India has 17.7% of the world's population. And they talk about some of the clinical trials in India. So they're doing the RD19 in India, Nigeria, and Latin America. And this is a little bit of their pipeline, but you see at the bottom, ArtiShield in phase 4 being conducted in India. Now, I like this report. It clears things up a little bit for us. Baytian Therapeutics is a clinical biopharmaceutical company developing 4 investigational drugs for difficult to treat cancers, of which 2 are being investigated to treat the current pandemic. So in phase 2 clinical trials with OT101 COVID-19 treatment in Latin America with 72 patients, and trial was selected by IBM Watson Health for use of the IBM clinical development solution at no cost to the company. And then in phase 4 clinical trial with ArtiVeda COVID-19 treatment in India, Nigeria, and Latin America, the global trial is expected to enroll 3,000 patients. It executed a contract with an Indian company for manufacturing, sales, and marketing of ArtiVeda in India. ArtiVeda will be launched in India before the end of the year. And then what else? We have also the OT101 for, like we said, certain cancers, also the treatment of the current pandemic. They kind of lump these together, ArtiVeda, ArtiShield, a therapeutic compound using herbal supplements. And so they go on, like we said before, phase 2, Latin America, 72 patients, seeking regulatory approval in Argentina and Peru, and actively working on approval in Brazil. So just to clarify, the brand PulmoHeal, licensed by the Food and Safety Standards Authority of India, will be manufactured and marketed by Windless Biotech, which is a private company. The brand ArtiVeda, licensed to Windless by the Ministry of Ayush, will be launched with Ayurvedic partnerships that are in development. This is where we got some of the information about the plans to license and get the EUA in both India as well as US, UK, and African continent. I'm just going to walk you through some of the recent headlines. Baytian Therapeutics reported second quarter GAAP EPS of 1 penny, revenues of 1.4 million. Later, Baytian Therapeutics to initiate commercialization of the COVID-19 Ayurveda med in India. Basically announced that the ArtiShield is now approved for manufacture by the ministry. ArtiShield is being evaluated against COVID-19, phase 4 in India, and it basically contains the Artemisia powder, 500 milligrams, like we saw before. So just a quick idea of how much information is out there. They launched the study. They wanted to have phase 4. To contribute at least 120 patients to the total aggregate of 3,000 patients. And we got info out on the 120, so this is coming up. Just hang tight. Baytian must go on with mid-stage study of antisense drug for COVID-19. Approves health regulator Instituto Nacional de Salud has signed off on a phase 2 clinical trial evaluating Metion Therapeutics OT101, an antisense against an essential protein required for the viral replication called TGF-beta. Again, this is transforming growth factor beta in patients with mild to severe, The study will test OT101 with standard of care treatments in two cohorts of about 48 Peruvians, those with mild to moderate disease, and those severely ill requiring mechanical ventilation or intubation. The trial has an arm in Argentina. The primary endpoint of the proportion of patients with clinical improvement score as assessed by the odds ratio at day 14. Moving on. Metion Therapeutics reports Q3 results, EPS of negative 2 pennies. Cash and cash equivalents were 1.4 million as of September 20th, a little bit more than a year ago. Metion drug ArtiVeda shows positive effect. What they basically said, they had interim results based on 60 randomized patients out of the 114 randomized to date across 3 sites in India. There was no adverse events that were reported, requiring them to discontinue the treatment. The majority of the 60 patients who received ArtiVeda plus standard of care recovered faster than those who received the standard of care alone. The standard of care was defined as treatment with Remdesivir, Ivermectin, Dexamethasone, Heparin, as well as Paracetamol, B complex, vitamin C, and zinc. The median time to asymptomatic WHO scale 1 was 5 days for the ArtiVeda plus standard of care as compared to 14 days for standard of care alone. The differences were statistically significant, meaning unlikely to happen by chance. The trend was more pronounced with higher initial disease status, and we'll see that again. The company expects to complete enrollment by the end of January with final data available 6 to 8 weeks thereafter. Completion of the trial, they're going to try to get EUA. Next one, this is their chart. It hasn't had a wild run up. We're at about 30 cents this weekend. There's a lot of buying opportunities at 20 cents. So that is already a 50% increase. Now, going to their investor page, a little bit of news that came out. When is this? November 30th. They claim development update for ArtiVeda / ArtiShield against COVID. 75% improvement on day 2. How could they say that? 75% of WHO scale 4 patients exhibited a drop to WHO scale 3 on day 2 of treatment with ArtiVeda. Note WHO scale 3 does not require hospitalization, so that's pretty great. 40% of WHO scale 4 patients exhibited a drop to WHO scale 1 on day 5 with treatment of ArtiVeda. Note WHO scale 1 is asymptomatic. That's good to know, especially if we don't know what those scales mean. Moving on, what was this? Oh, this helps us understand when ArtiVeda and PulmoHeal was added to standard of care. This is actually a really important one. This came out February 21st. They had interim data. The big news was that 31 out of 39, which is about 80% of patients taking ArtiVeda, became asymptomatic after day 5 of therapy. By comparison, only 12 out of 21 in the control group, which was equal to 57.1%, who were treated with standard of care alone became asymptomatic by day 5. So call it 80% compared to 57%. For the sicker patients with a WHO scale 4, the median time to becoming asymptomatic was only 5 days for ArtiVeda or PulmoHeal plus standard of care. Now, there's only 18 people in this group, so it's very, very small sample size. But as compared to 14 days for standard of care alone group, which only had 10 people in it, but very high p-value, 0.004, and normally you'd want less than 0.05. So this is a very good number, but the problem is the sample size is very small. Okay. They also said, in accordance with its high safety index, this product created no significant adverse events in our study and has a promise to stop viral replication as an antiviral agent and to treat symptoms. So good news just keeps coming. This is just a headline from February 1st, 2021. Metion launches its AI telemedicine platform for post-marketing survey to support its drug product for India called the PulmoHeal. Okay, so they have some of that going on. This is basically the clinical trials in India, just so that you know it's legit. This was from Saturday, February 20th, 2021, and it's being run by Winless. Inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, outcomes. They're looking for adverse events during the study or serious adverse events, and then they're looking for efficacy, 28 days, relief in the sign and symptoms of the Rona as per the WHO clinical progression scale, relief in sign and symptoms per the duration of symptoms. I have 120 people in India, and anyways. So just to get out of the science for a second and look at some of the financial valuations. This came from Zacks Small Cap Research. It's by David Bolles, PhD, out of Chicago, Illinois. He puts the valuation at 70 cents a share. It was trading for 22 cents back in December of 2020. We have another estimate, CNN Business. We have one analyst offering a 12-month price forecast from Ation Therapeutics Incorporated. Have a median, or it's the one and only, so $3 a share estimate, and for both the high and the low, since there's only one person covering it. But this represents a 918% increase from the last price of 29 cents. Looking at Reuters, Meitian Consensus have one outperform recommendation. Not all the way to buy, but I just want to look at this EPS. They expect break even at the end of 2021. So, and they have two estimates on that. So hopefully they're going to be covering their expenses. This is just another investor presentation. It's a little bit newer, but I just wanted to show you that they basically have two listed, the OT101 and the artemisinin. So they get at the transforming growth factor beta two different ways. This is from the sweet wormwood. This is from their drug that they have been developing. They have a quote here that basically, we're going to need some treatments as well. And that was a quote from Karen Mulligan, and some other people. Who knows who they are. But this is what I thought was interesting. An effective treatment would also offset economic losses, given the 7.9 trillion negative impact that the pandemic has had on the U.S. economy. If a treatment could offset the economic losses by even 5%, or almost about $400 billion, the economic benefit would be 5 to 7 times larger than the health benefits that they used in this model. And they talk about, what if we can cut hospitalization in half? They're basically talking about mutations, Asian, Oceania, Africa, Europe, South America, North America. I'm not exactly sure what this is or how to interpret it. Basically, fourth state confirms mink farm coronavirus outbreak in the United States. We, of course, remember some of the animals that they had to put down in Denmark. They're talking about how they're trying to sidestep some of the countless man hours or the long process it takes to get to a solution during the traditional approach. They look at some of the traditional therapeutics. Lopinavir, hydroxychloroquine, Remdesivir, interferon beta. They're basically saying all these failed. Yes. Dexamethasone as an anti-inflammatory was a success. I will say that I read recently that the top medical journal retracted their study on hydroxychloroquine, and that was basically what drove the WHO to make their decision to no longer recommend it in their Solidarity trial. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. It looks like the Solidarity trial was an independently run trial. But anyways, you get the idea of where they're going with some of this. This was the positive feedback loop that I mentioned before. They were saying basically you have an induction of TGF-beta and furin. TGF-beta induction of furin, and then you have viral replication, and then cellular entry, and then more TGF-beta and more furin, leading to more viral replication. So you can see how they'd like to stop that. They talk basically about, why the TGF-beta surge recruits neutrophils to the site of inflammation, but it then inhibits this thing, which causes fluid accumulation in the lungs, which can lead to acute respiratory distress syndrome or pneumonia. TGF-beta induces late-stage fibrosis, which means the lung it's not flexible anymore, compromising lung capacity and even recovery. TGF-beta induces interleukin-6, leading to the inflammation in the cytokine storm. TGF-beta induces the TGF-BLP, leading to vascular inflammation, and then induces IgA class switching, leading to IgA vasculitis or Kawasaki disease. So a lot of problems here. Anyway, this is an update. Basically, clinical trials are hyper-competitive. 3,807 studies on clinicaltrials.gov. Yes, I would say it's very competitive. This is their team. These are some charts. We looked at this before. So they're going to be testing it. They're going to have a study design. This is where we see that artemisinin or its various derivatives have been used for malaria treatment for a long time. In fact, they know quite well which of these structures is best I remember looking at that. In fact, I'll leave a card for the first video I did. These are some of the financial costs. So Remdesivir is in red. Their product is in black, and then the vaccines are in green. So you're just looking at the amount of cost for India, amount of cost for the globe. I mean, it's incredibly less. This again is the sweet wormwood plant. Some of the benefits of artemisinin. So the percent of inhibition in pink and cytotoxicity in blue. Basically, they say it's able to inhibit human TGF-beta. It's able to neutralize the virus in vitro. We saw the numbers that came out from their mid-stage results with the people that they were testing. So this is a really great slide. They're looking at the safety and efficacy of artemisinin and another drug, it looks like, for treatment. And what they found was that the treatment group, time to undetectable viral RNA in days, had a mean of 10.6 plus or minus 1.1. Control group 19.3. So it's pretty great, highly significant. And the length of the hospital stay was 13.3 compared to 21.3 with the control group. Now these are pretty huge swings on the deviation, 9.1 days of deviation, 4.8 days of deviation. So just by the numbers without intervention per 1 million, they had 16,000 fatalities. Peak hospitalization was 82,000. You do the intervention, you get 6,700 fatalities versus 16,000, so a lot less. Peak hospitalizations was 16,000 compared to 82,000. So they're running this Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Nigeria, Peru. 120 subjects, expanding to 300 subjects at 6 sites. Open label, phase 4 study, oral doses, 2-to-1 randomized, patients, duration 28 days, efficacy in ARTA-19, information we've seen before. Their conclusions: artemisinin activity against COVID is well supported at all levels, in silico, in vitro, and clinical. It is the only potentially prophylactic agent and cost-effective agent. Such an agent is needed to stop the pandemic, even in the presence of effective vaccine. It is active at all phases of the infection, and it'll be launched in India by the end of the year. And they say thank you. I'll let you guys read this if you like. The safety index is greater than 100 ratio of non-specific cell kills versus viral kill. They have patents covering it, over 15 international patents. It says their mechanism of action has been confirmed in 5 peer-reviewed international scientific medical publications. Concerns we might want to look at moving forward is what percentage of the revenues is Meiteon going to maintain? Who holds these patents? I believe Meiteon, of course, has, I think, OT101 in their pipeline, definitely. And ARTI-19 as well. Since artemisinin is a older chemical, we know that they probably had to receive a application in order to reprocess it, or repurpose it, I should say. There's not a lot of information on this company since they're not profitable. Sells at 1.77 times price per book. They're not really able to calculate most of these because they just don't have sufficient information. Price per book versus industry. It's good. Industry average is 4.5 times. Future growth, they see forecasted annual earnings growth to be negative 23.3%. This is coming from simplywall.street. Analyst forecasts. This is annual earnings growth, annual revenue growth. So I think they're going to sell more, but they think that their expenses are going to outpace their sales revenue. EPS growth. Like we said, we expect them to break even. Reuters thought they're going to break even by the end of the year, 2021. Should be here. Nope. Be here. This analyst has it at negative 3 cents per share. Management, average years of management tenure, 1.6 years. The CEO has been there 7 years. Compensation $260,000 a year. CEO owns about 20% of the company. We can see that here, 18.85% by the CEO, Vuyong Treyu, and then the other holders are significantly less. Someone with 3.14%, someone with 4.5%. Average person is 57 years old. Average board member is 68 years old and has been on tenure for 1.1 years. Shares bought. What do we have here? Shares bought. Okay. A lot of the shares were purchased 20, 18, 19, 12 cents. Okay. Ownership breakdown. General public owns 63% of the company. Institutions own about 4%. Private companies own about 4%. Insiders own about 32%. They're traded on the OTC PK, so pink sheets. About 90 million shares outstanding. They have, I think, 13 employees? Yeah, 13 employees. They're located in Agora Hills, California. That's kind of the story with these guys. Some more interesting information about their products. Of course, you could just keep reading and reading and reading. But that's the basic idea. I thought the information for their clinical outcomes were very good. It's just a little bit concerning to see how small those sample groups were. So hopefully we can get a better look at that. All for now. Thanks so much, everyone.